Welcome, viewers. Thanks for joining in for this very important and pertinent panel discussion on leading cybersecurity in the post-COVID-19 world. As businesses start to recover from COVID-19, CISOs will have to look at cybersecurity afresh. They will not only have to revisit security architectures, but also decide which solutions and controls to retain and which ones to retire. While at it, CISOs will also have to look for opportunities to innovate and eventually help in faster business recovery and growth. The panelists in this session, who are all leading enterprise cybersecurity leaders, will reveal their strategies of leading cybersecurity in all these areas in the post-COVID-19 world. Please join me in welcoming, in alphabetical order, Mr. Agnello D'Souza, CISO Kotak Mahindra Bank, Mr. Alexander Klotz, Head Technology Continental, Mr. Ambuj Bhalla, CISO Indigo, Mr. Bithal Bhardwaj, Global CISO GMR, and Mr. Manish Tiwari, Senior VP and Global CISO Airtel. Welcome, gentlemen. I'll set the ball rolling with Mr. D'Souza. Mr. D'Souza, how do you see the threat landscape evolving in the post-COVID-19 era? Which new threats would emerge, and how can CISOs counter them better? How do you see the role of the CISO evolving as well in the new landscape?
So COVID-19 has changed the way we live and work, and work from home is a new normal, and it is here to stay. Because even organizations prefer employees working from home because it saves a lot of operational cost for them. Okay, and also what we have seen in the COVID period is a huge rise in online transactions. Okay, and there are many first-time users of the banking channels, transaction systems, and so forth. Some of the cyber attacks which we are seeing recently, and which we see in the media and read the news and those kind of things, are a surge in ransomware and data breaches. Okay, and the ransomware attacks more so on very small organizations. So we are seeing more of those happening nowadays, and the hackers asking for ransom money, which and attacking some of the smaller organizations probably is easier for them because they don't have the wherewithal to address this kind of cyber attacks. The other main issue is of data security and data privacy, because work from home, you don't have that kind of surveillance which you would otherwise have in an office environment. And those are some of the concerns that need to be addressed. Yeah.
Sure, Mr. D'Souza. Coming to Mr. Bithal Bhardwaj, sir, your thoughts on this?
Well, thank you, Yash. First of all, thank you for having me here. I think as a CISO, if I look at where we are right now, I think not just as a CISO, but as a humanity, we've never been more so vulnerable the way we are as a society today, right? And as you know, whenever the society becomes vulnerable, that increases the crimes. In this case, it happens to be cybercrime because everybody has been locked down in their own homes, and then cyber gives them an opportunity to go in and then start attacking and making some money, right? Now, what has also not has helped is the geopolitical situation across the globe, not just for India, but mostly across the globe. You're seeing these different geopolitical conflicts happening, and that has given a rise to a lot of very sophisticated attacks, across the globe. What has happened is, see, as a CISO, remember we are now almost 8 or 9 months into, ever since this whole pandemic started, and all the organizations, all the enterprises, they have been designed fundamentally to have their user bases, within the perimeter. People have moved out of it, right? And that has become a norm as well. Now, my users are not returning to office. Half of them likely will be staying, working remotely. A lot of them have gone to their small hometowns, working from home. So I think the whole landscape has changed. While from the threat standpoint, the criminal activities have gone up. There is a larger nation-state risk involved as well. But fundamentally, as a CISO, you have to deal more with the new attack vector, fundamentally, because it has now all come down to the specific users and the specific devices. Because all your controls in an organization were designed to keep everybody inside, but now all they have moved out, right? So I think in my opinion, it is all about how do I make sure that the users are secure, their devices are secure, right? And fundamentally focusing on people aspect at this point in time becomes very, very critical. So I think as a CISO, it's about how do I make that culture change, wherein people start looking at cyber safety and cyber security, no matter where they are.
Sure, Mr. Bhardwaj. Let me come to Mr. Alexander Klotz now. Mr. Klotz, cybersecurity teams, for their part, were largely successful in taking on a dual mission of supporting business continuity on one hand and protecting the enterprise and its customers on the other. What changes have you observed in terms of threats and the CISO role? How have they changed, both of them?
Yeah, I mean, we touched the aspect of culture before. I think, first of all, I think we have to acknowledge that COVID-19 is one of the biggest accelerators we could see and experience on the path of digitalization, right? I mean, we had a strategy before, work from home, 20%. We allowed that before in India already to our employees, but it has accelerated, right? Going to 100% at peaks and then still being in a high percentage right now because of the pandemic situation. And only the business critical, the people who are dependent on infrastructure like test labs and vehicles even are working in the office. So that's important. I mean, just to understand that accelerator, that culture shift, nobody would have imagined a year before, right? Even at the beginning of this year. And I think with that, there is, I mean, whatever happened so far, what we already had on the radar, we had implemented Office 365 and the collaboration tools before, luckily, I would say, and everybody started using them from one day to the other and got pushed into that, got thrown into the cold water. And I think with that, the awareness about the IT became imminent, right? I mean, I've seen so many emails and expressions about how fantastic IT has been able to support us on that way. And people really realized how valuable IT is. And in that specific regard, certainly the CISO part as well, right? Because it's operating well, there is no major hazard right now, at least in our operations, nothing happened, while the number of attacks certainly grew. And the number of attacks, I mean, we also understand these attackers, they play with our anxiety, right? They play with the VUCA part, they play with our feelings and fears, right? And that will happen tomorrow with something else. Maybe it's not COVID, but tomorrow it's something else. And overall, I would really see how the CISO part and the IT part became a very prominent stage position in the last year, basically.
Absolutely, Mr. Klotz. Coming to Mr. Bhalla, so the last 6-7 months have been a period of lull for the aviation industry. But going forward, as aviation starts to open up, how do you see threat landscape changing for your sector?
I think it is going to multifold in the aviation industry, and the reason for this is because of this COVID happening, affecting every business and every life. I see there's a evolution in terms of having the contactless experiences, right? So, right from your entering the airport to your security check and to your boarding, all the manual tasks are now being made as contactless. So I'm sure if you have recently had a chance to travel, the baggage reconciliation systems and all of that, they've all been automated. Now, see, it was a need of the hour to automate this because people wanted that kind of an environment or at that point in time. But with this, you've adopted lot many things, lot many technologies, lot many automations. You introduced robotics and all of this. So there's a I think surge in the kind of technology and the systems that have contributed to doing this. And because now, see, the point is that this has already been introduced now, but have we had a chance to actually look at it from a holistic view as to what kind of new dimensions it is bringing in? I think that's an area where I think the pose a very severe threat to the aviation industry per se.
Sure, Mr. Bhalla. Let me come to Mr. Manish Tiwari now. Sir, you are among very few CISOs in the industry who are also managing the security business for a large brand like Airtel, which itself has a huge enterprise customer base. What are your observations, having seen both sides of the world? What do you see about the pandemic, about the CISO role? Your thoughts here, sir.
So it's just me and Vishal from Infosys who have this unique opportunity, I would say. Actually, I see it the same from both the sides, because if I try to see it with a different colored spectacles and the view is very different from the other end, then that means I am not trying to position a solution. I am trying to push a product. And I love to say that as a CISO today, My community wants solutions. They don't want to buy products anymore. So let's very clearly, I heard all the panelists, I completely agree with them. One thing is for sure, that this pandemic did not, has clearly taught us one thing. This pandemic definitely did not have a cheat sheet. They did not have a reference book. This pandemic is something that the whole world was completely unprepared for. And I don't think even 2 months or 3 months into this pandemic did even governments and governments of some of the most advanced nations in the world realized as to how deep and how long would this pandemic impact and last. And now we are very clearly looking into this whole new way of life. Earlier we were looking at probably, short term, and the summer will come and it'll go away. Then it came to that, look, it's going to be around for 6-7 months. Now, then came the conversation that, look, 2021 is, by mid 2021, life will get back to normal. But now, if I may quote what Alexander said, it's the new way of life. And probably some things will not change for a very long time, because I think one thing that this pandemic has taught is some of the more efficient ways of doing business. So it's also about people's mindset. And let's not forget that the world, in any case, was facing a financial crisis even before the pandemic hit us. So the first and foremost thing we have to understand as CISOs is that we have to be aligned with the business. The second thing that we have to understand is that if we want to protect the business, we have to really understand what business we are protecting. We have to understand our business in order to protect that business. And it doesn't matter whether I am doing it for my organization or I go with a solution for either, Agnello or for Ambuj. I have to look at life, things from the spectacles that they wear. So first and foremost thing is that, the world is really demanding in a very big way anywhere and anytime computing, because there are safety issues involved. There are a large number of companies who have actually declared that not more than 25% of their workforce at any given time till at least next year will be working from offices, and everybody else will work from home. There are very large companies, which have actually made work from home as a permanent option for their employees. I don't want to name them, but this is where things are actually heading. So what this basically means is anywhere, anytime computing. Now, typically security has been seen as something which has overheads with respect to cost, true. Overheads with respect to experience and convenience. At times true, at times not true. There are certain aspects of security. So the solutions that we are looking in anywhere and anytime computing is something which does not impact the working experience of a particular user, depending, irrespective of the fact that they may be working from home. And yes, at times perhaps their connectivity is not all that great. So which means that you have to enable them in a manner where they can overcome these difficulties with the minimum of issues. Sure. Then the second thing we have to understand is that the perimeter that we used to talk about, that is completely dissolved. Your corporate perimeter. There are so many functions within the corporate that would never go out of your perimeter. You could never think about doing your SOC and your NOC operations sitting from home. But within 4 weeks, by mid of March, we actually had to move 55,000 plus people to work from home within a matter of 5 days. You can imagine the amount of capacity that we had to build in order to do that. And we all did this in a matter of 5 to 6 days in Airtel. Every single function that could be done from, remotely from the safety of home, it was enabled. And it had to be done keeping risk assessment, risk management issues in place. So a combination of VPI or VDN, with multi-factor authentication, all that stuff, creating more use cases in the security operations environment, so that you could basically catch credential misuse immediately and sort of do that. So that's been another challenge. And obviously those are the kind of solutions that one looks at giving your customers. You must understand that in this entire thing, the individual is the most vulnerable. And I think the cyber attacks have gone up exponentially. I think it was one of my colleagues out here mentioned that, look, online transactions have gone up exponentially, precisely. So when your online transactions have gone up phenomenally, because now you're literally ordering even groceries online, a lot of stuff you are trying to order online, which you would not have otherwise dreamt of doing so. Your online transactions are going up, which means additional use of debit cards and credit cards and so on and so forth. And believe me, it's a very low risk game, and very, very high potential, with high potential results, where hackers basically try to target the weakest link, which is the individual. So definitely we are seeing an exponential rise in cybercrime against that weakest element, which is the retail customer. So if I am sitting on my machine and I'm doing my official work, believe me, I'm also using the same for my personal transactions at times.
Sure.
Yeah. And so you have to protect the retail customer. The challenge here is managing the risk and understanding what is the right balance between business continuity and your IT security controls.
Great inputs there, sir. Let me come back to Mr. D'Souza again. So the new threat landscape comprises a variety of consumer and employee targeted phishing campaigns, as well as a higher frequency of enterprise level cyber attacks. These include ransomware, crypto mining operations, and privilege escalation attacks. How can CISOs gear up to meet these threats? Coming from a bank, it becomes even more critical, even more crucial for the CISO to prevent, hackers from attacks.
So as Manish already mentioned, right, people are the weakest link, and we have seen in the last 6 months the surge in the wishing and phishing attacks on consumers, has gone up manifold, and it is all originating from places like Jharkhand and those kind of places, and somehow I don't know why the attribution is difficult, and we are not able to really get those people to book. But besides that, I think the biggest challenge is basically awareness, of the employees, of the staff. We can put in a lot of technology, we can put in processes and those kind of things, but I think the most difficult part of it is awareness, and we have to actually continue to be at it all the time, come up with innovative ways, because awareness is not some security awareness is not something which is on back of the mind of a normal user or a customer, and hence we have to keep looking at it, find out innovative ways to engage the customers, engage the users, do awareness for them. So I think that is a very, very critical aspect that one has to look at. So basically we have to look at all three areas, right? The prevention, detection, and the response controls. Now traditionally we have been doing a lot with respect to prevention, and that has been the way things have been done earlier. But there is a limit to the extent of prevention that you can do, because you have to there's a thin balance of convenience versus security that you have to keep managing, and hence you can't make prevention so restrictive that people are not able to then function properly, and hence we have to rely a lot now on your detection capabilities and how quickly you are able to respond faster. And I think a lot of the investments and the thought process and the energies are going in this direction to see how I can make it better, how can I detect more, and how can I respond faster. So I think these are some of the areas where we have been into look into and have started to focus on. So I think these are the two key areas apart from awareness, definitely, which is there. The third, the next one of the most important aspects which you talk about security, hygiene, or the basic hygiene, which has to be there. So while it is easier said than done, because there are a lot of challenges even in the basic hygiene aspect of it. Like for example, you have outdated systems that are there. You cannot patch those systems, and obviously then as a CISO you have to figure out ways to manage that risk. Obviously you can't shut business, and you have to get that working. So there is a tightrope that we have to keep managing, and ensuring that we manage security.
Sure, Mr. D'Souza. I'll come to Mr. Bharadwaj now. So just to put things in perspective, Google tallied more than 18 million malware and phishing emails related to the novel coronavirus on its service each day in April. It also reported identifying more than a dozen government-backed groups using COVID-19 themes for these attempts. So the situation, all in all, is very challenging. How do you see CISOs getting on top of these threats?
There was a very interesting report by Gartner, which was released, I think, last month or a month before that. Email security is very basic, very fundamental for the security of your organization. I think phishing remains the biggest attack vector. right? For any breaches in any organization. Traditionally, the way you've secured your email environment is through a email security gateway, right? Which acts like a firewall. It's pretty good from a known bad perspective, right? But it's not adequate from a lot of new attacks, right? It doesn't help you with impersonation, doesn't help you with social engineering, it doesn't help you with many other things which you wish, the gateway will be able to do that. Now, that's where a lot of us saw these ATPs coming into the market, right? You have Microsoft ATP for O365, you have other similar products from other OEMs as well. Those were good to an extent, but still, with those technologies as well, it's not good enough, to educate the user. So now the Gartner identified a new category. It's known as integrated email security solution. Fundamentally, it's machine learning based. What it's doing for you is it's not only looking at the behavior, understanding the behavior of the emails for a user. It's looking at the behavior of the individual mailboxes and then using that intelligence to drive whether it's some kind of a social engineering attack happening or it's an impersonation happening. A lot of these new tools also gives you very educative feature. It's just not about acting in the backend, right? It's actually on your face. It tells you, hey, you know what? And you can have a differentiated messaging, flags in the email itself for the end user, which says, well, it looks like this might be a phishing attack. This might be an impersonation because of XYZ reason. It's very important that you are educating the end user, right? And not just acting in the back end using some of these technologies. So I think the new age IESS tools and technologies, I think they hold great potential. We're evaluating it ourselves as well. I believe it's just not acting in the backend, but also on the face of the users to tell them what to look for, so that it helps them, make more informed, decisions as well.
Sure, Mr. Tiwari, your thoughts here, sir? Ransomware, crypto mining operations, privilege escalation attacks. How can CISOs mitigate all these?
Yash, none of these attacks are new. They've been around for quite some time. So there is no magic concoction right now, again, some new emerging attacks. All of these have been here for quite some time. I think the standard, the strategy against these kind of attacks is quite similar. There is no silver bullet. You have to have you have to protect the user, you have to protect the device, you have to protect the data. You have to have, depending upon how critical is your organization with respect to the data or customer data that you hold, and depending upon its criticality to your business operations and existence, you have to invest accordingly. So the key is you have to invest, and you have to invest in the right technologies. You have to ensure that all your threat vectors, and yes, email is one of them. So are your endpoints, so is your perimeter, and so is your database, and so on and so forth. You have to have all the relevant and what I would say critical pieces of solutions in place for a layered approach to security. That fundamental thing does not change. And this is something I've been saying for the last 4 or 5 years. In fact, one thing is very clear, that as we start coming up with new solutions, more complex and AI driven, all that is fine. We should never forget the fundamentals and basics of IT risk management. You can have the best solution in place, but if you don't patch up your systems, if you don't do application security testing, you have flaws in your application security process, you don't patch up your critical systems on time, you don't update your signatures. I mean, these are basic hygiene. You can buy the best stuff in the market, but if you do not manage it well, then you're bound. It's not a question of whether you will fail, it's a question of when will problem actually change. Unfortunately, you can have everything and you can still have problems striking you, because that's the nature of advanced persistent threats and 0 days. But the fact is that if you have all these things in place, then your ability to catch this as the attack is emerging, throttle it, and counter it or recover from it becomes extremely quick. So as a CISO, I would say, I think we would be living in a fool's paradise to say that we are 100% safe, right? I think what's more important is that, do you have a layered concept of security? Have you applied all necessary controls? Are you following your own information security policies and IT risk governance standards? And lastly, do you have an organization in place which is equally strong for your four pillars? That is protect, detect, respond, and recover.
Let me come to Mr. Klotz now. Sir, as employees began working from home, security teams have had to remediate immediate operational process and technology gaps. With 6 months gone, what changes or additions need to be done by CISOs to align with continued work from home? Because, I feel employees are going to work from home for the foreseeable future. What else, what more needs to be done?
A lot of interesting topics were addressed in the last comments. I liked a lot also what Peter said, that we need to look at alternative ways, right? Not only the pure antivirus, right? But maybe the content of the email may also be or phishing, right? And then you pick up the phone or you get the contact via LinkedIn and all these channels, right? I mean, the hackers are also getting smarter, right? They understand what you have on the firewall, on the antivirus, and they find other ways to get into you. So I think the most important part we can really not stress enough, even if it was said before, it is the user, right? And we look at that, we have to understand the user is under business pressure as well. He has to deliver on the project, right? So how can I make it really as seamless as possible for him to follow the guidelines and the policies, if you will, right? Anything that operates in the back has to operate without user interaction, right? I mean, whether that's backup, whether that's patching, right? It should not interfere with me. I should not worry about it. And then when it comes to really the minimum things that I need to do as a user, establish the VPN connection, for example, all these kind of things, really keep the education high, because even after 6 months, 9 months of work from home, we will definitely see some tiring effects as well, right? People get used to it, they feel they are safe, and they forget about certain things that they maybe had in mind in the beginning. And so from that side, I think really continuous education, panels like this, right, to discuss what else we can do, learn from each other, are definitely an important step for that.
Mr.
So
Bhalla.
can I just add to what Mr.
Sure.
Alexander said? Yeah. So it's very interesting. Like, we're talking about awareness here. So we do this phishing drills, right? So we send a phishing email, to the to our employees and staff, and then see how they respond to the phishing emails. Now, what happens is that you send a phishing email to one of the staff people. They click on it, they go, they submit their passwords and all those kind of things, and then you send out an awareness email to the staff member, saying that, oh, this is the mistake that you did. You clicked on this, should not have done this, that, everything. And we hope that he has read the email, he has understood everything. Okay. And what we started to do lately is we started to also issue a warning through the HR, right? Saying, this is the mistake you did, and this is your been done repeatedly. And it is only when he sees the warning is the first time he reads that mail. And so, oh, did I do this? But no one told me it was a mistake. I said, no, we send you an email. So that's what it is, So it's a very, very difficult thing that you are at. So while you can send out mails and hope that he's reading it, is understanding, but it is a challenge, and we have to keep working at it.
Sure. Great strategy there, Mr. D'Souza. Mr. Bhalla, your thoughts here?
I think more or less the same, but what I believe is that the 70% of the attacks, I believe, they happen because of the hygiene issues. So whether we have a layered defense in depth being implemented, whether or in the on-premise or the cloud strategies that we are opting, I think that is becoming the main enabler for the hacking community to actually look at and do hanky-panky and various XYZ things that leads to various issues. I think with this new times, right? So we spoke of perimeterless organizations that people are venturing into. So which means that we will now be into cloud. We'll be hosting our workloads in clouds and all of that. So the strategy in itself has to change. So while cloud may give us on a basic at an infra level, they may give us some kind of a protection. We have to look at drafting technologies or solutions in a way such that what is the critical asset to the business, what kind of data, etc., that asset holds, and then we have to build strategies around it. Yeah, and I think we spoke of the email security and others, but see, the point is that the email in itself is such a vulnerable protocol, but there's the DMARC that was set as a protocol to actually help to protect your domain. I think barring the banking industry, which is implemented it to the core, I think that in itself, the adoption rate in itself is like very less in that from that standpoint. So I think this is all leading to the hygiene issues, and these hygiene issues are the ones which are easy food for the hacker community to look at it. And so we have to define ways and means to look at it. So I think some sectors, because of the regulations are stringent, so they are able to manage it. But all sectors, you have to have regulatory stance. So, for example, retail or the e-commerce channels, where this is becoming really a tough thing to manage otherwise.
Sure, sure.
I can add something to that, Yashan.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Mr. D'Souza brought up a very interesting point about the phishing simulation, and then we heard from Mr. Klotz about the training aspect, education aspect of the employees' users, right? Sometime back, we did a research, and this is, I'm talking about 3 years back. We were trying to understand the psyche vulnerability of different segment of users, functions, nationality, and trying to understand who falls for what kind of a phishing email, right? It's very important. And when we did that exercise, some very interesting things came up. So the sample size we picked up was, so we picked up a IT company, okay? And we figured out if you send out a phishing email with an Excel file and email simply says that, well, here is a task you have to accomplish or do, the IT guy would typically fall for that if you're based in India. At the same time, if you send out a phishing email which says, oh, this is a scanned PDF from your printer, Indians will not fall for that. Comparatively, we found that certain other geography people fell more for that, because it goes back to the cultural aspect of the geography as well. People are self-aware, so they will not fall for that. It's also important that the point here is it's very important to understand your psyche and your human vulnerabilities as well in your system, and then educate them accordingly. Typically, you will see organizations running the phishing simulations, going after the click fish rate and things like those, which is not actual representation of what you should be looking after.
Sure, Mr. Baza. So, Mr. Klotz, in the new normal, I feel cybersecurity will have to be embedded into new processes and technologies as a strategic imperative, rather than just as an afterthought. How are you enabling this?
Yeah, I think like we discussed in the beginning, right? I think the organizations really from top down have to acknowledge the importance of the CISO, and it's not see it as a cost factor, right? It's basically from something that is running in the back, now a function that needs to be implemented into the strategic planning of an organization, right? I mean, something you cannot, you have to build it in from the very beginning, right? Or whatever product, whatever you design, you have to think about cybersecurity from the very beginning. We do that now, in the IT side, we have to do that on the product side as well, right? As an automotive company, we don't have vehicles to be hacked in. So you start from the architecture, you look at that and make sure that you really have not the perfect door and the perfect lock, but you leave the key under the doormat, right? So how can you make sure that you really design it from the beginning? It's a strategic part, which is also equipped with the right people, the right knowledge in the organization, and the right funding as well, right? And I think also, we're an automotive company. Obviously, we have a lot of products that need to be and have cybersecurity built in. And we also realized that it's maybe not the best to just do it all on your own, right? So you collaborate with the right partners. We even acquired an Israeli-based startup some time back, some 2 years back, Argus, which is helping us on cybersecurity solutions for the product. Because again, we have our strengths, but not necessarily always the latest know-how on cybersecurity that we can get out from the market, right?
I'll come to Mr. Tiwari. So CISOs will have to anticipate the next normal, in terms of how their workforce, customers, supply chain, channel partners, and peers will work together, so that they may appropriately engage and embed security by design, just like what Mr. Kloss just talked about. What are your thoughts on this? How would you enable security, embedding security by design in your organization, and what would you recommend to other CISOs?
I agree with that because the right strategy is to have a built-in approach rather than a bolt-on approach to security. Whether it is designing in products, whether applications, or when you are commissioning a new ecosystem within your environment. So in Airtel, we follow that concept very, very strictly as part of our process. Whenever a new system is or an application is being designed, and we do a lot of internal development as well. So whenever we're doing that, we have the security team involved, the security architects involved, right ab initio, work with the core team as part of the core team, and then at the relevant phase, the application is also subjected to the application security testing from a functionality as well as from a static and dynamic code analysis. So a technical an AppSec application security testing holistically from a 360-degree perspective. So that is done. So we follow that. Answering your second question, this is about planning. Oh, absolutely. It's extremely critical. You don't have a blank check from your from your organization. You're working, you have to prioritize. You have to and in most organizations, if it's a medium to large size organization, then there is a cost of implementing a solution. That cost is not just financial, it's also in terms of effort. And very rarely do you get or inherit a greenfield project. In more often, the norm is that you inherit an existing system into which you have to then integrate a new solution or replace an existing one because the older one, for whatever reason, needs to be replaced. And this is akin to painting a moving car at times. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to plan. You have to have a very clear plan. I mean, I'm saying, assuming that you have selected the right product, both based on your POCs, you have stitched your solution, you have decided what exactly you want, you've defined your scope, your objective, all having been done. What you have to have is an execution plan. And that takes, and then, when you implement that, you have to do it in a manner where you go as per plan, and you have to be able to look and plan at least 5 to 10 steps ahead. Otherwise, you'll always fall flat in your execution. There will be scope creep and so on and so forth. So you have to, in a complex organization, you need to be able to plan well in advance, but you also have to keep that 5 to 10% element of surprises, that in case there is a 0 day that comes, or an unannounced vulnerability that comes about, you need to have the agility to be able to respond to that.
Sure, sir. Great. So we're fast running out of time. So one final question to all the panelists before we wrap up the session. I'll start with Mr. Bhalla there. So going forward, CISOs will have to look for opportunities to innovate and eventually help in faster business recovery and growth. What's the best approach for achieving this? How are you recalibrating your cybersecurity to align with the new normal?
So I think, as I was mentioning, the adoption of technology, and basically the organizations today are becoming the digital native organizations. So from that standpoint, you have to understand and do a various kind of assessments, in terms of business, technology, etc., to understand what is the crux that you want to address. And in line with this, you will have to develop your strategies, for which I think you will have to have, unless you deep dive into the business as a business enabler, I think that you'll not be able to make it to that level, I believe. Yeah. So I think from that standpoint, you have to execute various kind of assessments to understand and look at it.
Sure, Mr. Bhalla. Mr. Klotz.
You have to go to prevent, right, and not just react. And I think the best way is also to look at the empowered IT or CISO organization itself, right? That has a word, that has a strategic impact, as I said before, and the risks that are there are taken serious to be able to prevent and prepare and not only react, right? So in that regard, I think we covered most important topics, because I think you should avoid to have that learning, right? I mean, you make mistakes and you learn, right? But these mistakes can be really expensive. And I think we have seen enough mistakes from other companies, how how critical it can be. So any organization is basically well advised to take that risk really serious and plan ahead accordingly.
Great. Mr. D'Souza?
Yeah, I think one of the key things to drive any kind of strategy for the CISO is to have a culture of risk, management in the organization, and where you have to build a level of trust with the all the various stakeholders. I think once the trust factor is there, then it becomes easier to drive the strategy where people who see, look up to you as somebody who's an enabler rather than somebody who's an hindrance, in whatever you do. And I think one in our organization or what we have is we have this thing about three layer of defense, where the first layer is basically the business themselves or the owner, IT owner, where he himself basically ensures that whatever he does it in a secure manner, and so that basically takes away a lot of the issues that can come up later. So I think that is one important aspects. And with the wave of digitization that we are doing and cloud adoption and all this, so definitely we as CISOs we have to play a very key role, and come up with strategies to ensure that business is enabled. Is what I think.
Sure. Great input. Mr. Bhardwaj.
Right. So, Yash, so my take on that would be that, like it or not, but COVID-19 has given a great opportunity to the cybersecurity leaders, you know, in terms of making sure that the entire organization is aware of what the risks are. Yeah. CISO teams are now far better integrated with your business teams, with your IT teams. Investments are being made to secure your infrastructure as well, right? I think the only thing we can do is keep the momentum going. Don't stop on that. I think this whole situation has given you that, I would say, an edge. Just build on that. That's one. And I think I heard in the great, very short story from someone. Somebody asked other guy, why did somebody invented the brakes, for the cars? The guy said, oh, well, to stop it. He said, no, the brakes were invented so that you can go faster. Yeah. So put that in that perspective. So you are that brake for the organization to transform itself faster, right? So with that said, let's not mess it up. We got an opportunity, we got the right pedestal right now as a security organization. Let's build on that.
The car guy, I have to just like this comment you just made. Excellent.
Well said, sir. Finally, Mr. Tiwari, final thoughts. What value does Airtel Secure bring to enterprise cybersecurity leaders? How are you helping CISOs in the dual mission of supporting business continuity and protecting their enterprise and customers?
So the first and foremost I'd like to share is that whatever we are trying to bring to our customers, more or less we have done it for ourselves internally. So we are 5 steps ahead. So if, for example, if we are talking about security orchestration and automation, that is something that we are 70% automated internally, and we are trying to raise that bar to an even higher level. The second thing is that internally, we have a very solutions mindset to approaching our security challenges. And that's exactly what we try to do for our customers as well. Mindful of the fact that we are not an OEM, we have stitched partnerships with some of the best companies in the world, and we leverage some of their key products to basically stitch solutions for customers based on what their requirements are, as against what probably a service provider would like to sell to them. This we are trying to do, with the best of intentions, and looking at security from a 360-degree perspective. And keeping that in mind, we have recently launched our Airtel Secure Intelligence Center, which is an amalgamation. It's a solution that we have put together, which has multiple layers of service we can build upon. And lastly, I would like to share with you, and this has already been released in the public domain. I'm very proud to share that recently, with our partnership with Radware, we have managed to get and commission the first global scrubbing center in India of its kind with anybody, which means that for DDoS mitigation as well as for WAF solutions, a customer's data will not have to leave the country, whether inline or on demand kind of a services. Everything will be positioned here and will be taken care of in India. wherein Radware has worked with us to position their solution running out of an Airtel data center. So this collaboration is not only great for Airtel, but I think it's a first for India, and really proud of both the teams that work very hard to bring this solution for customers in India. Whether they are Airtel customers or they are non-Airtel, I mean, not Airtel customers, it doesn't matter. This solution is available to everybody.
Sure.
That is what. Thank you.
Great. That's all we have time for. To sum up the discussion, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed consumer and business behavior in dramatic ways. Cybersecurity teams have generally performed far above expectations in fulfilling a dual mission of addressing new risks and anticipating the new normal. As they continue to enable changing business priorities, cybersecurity leaders in the next normal will not only protect their organizations at scale, but also make security once and for all an integral part of delivering business value. Thank you, panelists, for those wonderful insights. And thank you, viewers, for being a part of this. Stay safe and keep watching ETCISO Decrypt. Thank you.